Saturday, church, graduation party for his son. And I remember, I said, Katie, I remember you were even Katie. And one of the kids I saw, I coached, and now they have kids.
Hey guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
How are you?
What's good? What? Talked to JJ and pushed that off till
Yeah. Yeah.
July. We'll see.
I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission to order. It's 6:30 on Wednesday, June 12th. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak on any subject not on the agenda. I don't think we have this is related to item 10. Item 5 is discuss and consider the minutes from our meeting on May 20th. Any additions, edits, any members?
I move approval as presented.
Second. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Item 6, discuss and consider request from Cottage Grove Business Development LLC for approval of the CSM to combine the 2 existing parcels into one 67-acre parcel on the northwest corner of County TT and County Highway N.
So this is the property that Gray Wolf purchased from the Dushak family that was annexed, I believe, at the last meeting. They're simply seeking to combine the 2 parcels into one. We recommend approval. Paul Wagner's here from Gray Wolf if there's any questions, but it's pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the combine the 2 existing parcels into one approximately 67-acre parcel.
A second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All right, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Item 7, discuss and consider a request from European Grandshot for either 1, a waiver of the village's ETJ review of the parcel in Kennedy Hills subdivision, or 2, the ability to simultaneously review the preliminary and final plat for the proposed Kennedy subdivision at the July Plan Commission meeting. Staff had notes in here on that as well.
Yeah, so this was the Kennedy Hill subdivision that Dave Reesout, who's here, brought in a couple months ago, came in with the concept plan. Didn't really have any concerns or comments at that time. I think in terms of, scheduling contractors was kind of the biggest issue that they're looking to get started. So looking for ways to accelerate the process through the village review. Their first request was to have us waive our ETJ authority. We've done that once since I've been here. That was a very small subdivision on the very south edge of our ETJ. This is bigger, it's closer. have some concerns about the precedent of doing that. The alternative request was to have the village look at both the preliminary and final plat at the next meeting. That I personally don't have a problem with. There's nothing in the ordinance that would prevent us from doing that. I wouldn't want to do that on something that's in the village limits, but this is also being reviewed by the county, it's being reviewed by the town. Public improvements are going to be town improvements, not village improvements. It's basically at the applicant's risk if something goes wrong with the preliminary plat approval that they've gone ahead with the final plat, but they're obviously willing to take that on. So I think as long as the precedent that we're setting is that we would only consider it for an ETJ subdivision, which really doesn't happen all that often, then I would be okay with combining those. The waiver, I guess I'd be more concerned.
And you may add to that, Mrs. Dave Reese, who's the principal, and David Conley.
You want to come up to, so we can
You're
capture your...
I'm Dave Dinkel, Remax Property Shop. This is Dave Reesop, principal of the Kennedy Hills subdivision. This phase is 16 lots out of a 64-lot project. You've seen the maps. David, of course, is Wisconsin mapping, and he did just a work of art on designing it. His engineer is a person named Cleve Gumbar, who's gone through and is just finishing and completing all the work in a country subdivision. That will be reviewed by the township, it'll be reviewed by the county. We looked at the Bass Road or the Vinnie subdivision down here, which was outside, well, which was kind of in your ETJ's area. That was 15 lots. This phase is 16 lots of the 64-lot projected item. Apparently it was out in your maps. You did not show that as something that was going to happen, and so then you just waved off on that. This project is in your maps. As you look on up there, you can see that this area was always projected to become a subdivision. And we would like that same consideration of waiving your review. It's an economic thing in part, and it's a timing thing. We're already going to have 3 engineers put their approvals on it. I don't know why we need more.
Well, when Aaron and I talked about this, we've always been very careful when something involves an ETJ. In fact, the one that did get approved, we had to swallow pretty hard on. So I think that the fact that if the Plan Commission is willing to combine the 2 reviews, you probably come out pretty well, because we did have a subdivider in the village in the last couple of years who wanted to do that, and we said no, that we wanted them to go through the timing process. So that's at least my recommendation, is if the Plan Commission's going to do anything, it would be to let them simultaneously review the preliminary and final.
Problem I have is we get a village subdivision, so someday when we're next to the village is next to your subdivision, and I realize there's some roads there, and it's not always the case, but we run up into the case where, well, our roads aren't big enough to handle the traffic going on there. So if we don't have a chance to review it now and catch something, the township comes back and says, well, we don't want the road connections that haven't been any secret. They've been on our transportation plan and comprehensive plan, and all of a sudden, well, you know, these aren't big, these aren't enough. So I guess I would want to stick with us still being able to review it. Like Lee said, I guess if staff's willing, then you guys are willing to shake the dice on the combined thing. Not crazy about that idea, but I guess if you want to take that risk. that's fine, but I don't think we should waive our ETJ rates. Okay,
Um,
or John?
Please.
I'm gonna have to say that I appreciate you coming here and appreciate the growth and development. I wanna make sure, from my perspective, you know, I'm all in and trying to figure out ways to help streamline the process. The number one option is kind of concerning because I don't want to waive the village's rights. At that point, we're sort of waiving our rights. And I don't know that that really suits us. I like the option number 2 of trying to help you out, expedite it as best we can. If staff is capable of supporting it, I like the option number 2, and I appreciate your ability to articulate, hey, we have a bit of a conflict, we want to streamline things, here's options. And I like that you did that. I've been on a lot of committees, a lot of options, like, hey, I have a problem, you solve it. And you guys gave us options, and I appreciate that. I just want to thank you for your time for coming in and being able to articulate what you're looking for. So thanks for that.
And actually, Aaron was the one who very much helped in this process, and just talked with David. We're happy to do them together, because then we literally save a month. And this has been such a disastrous year for everybody that does work outside. It's too wet. So it's going to be a short season, and it'll really help our contractor get in there. So if we can combine them, that would be wonderful. We'll make sure they're right, so it's really easy for you.
I would encourage you to continue to work with staff. It's a good group, and if there's anything we can do to call a different meeting, whatever, I mean, there's always options, and I appreciate you giving us options. Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners?
I just have some questions. I know Dave and David very well,
hi.
so, hey guys, thanks for coming out. So, are we looking at using a transfer development right to this site?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, 2 of them then?
2 of them.
2 of them?
In the township.
Okay,
What he's discussing is that we've contracted for 2 development rights
okay,
from places in the township, and the way the town plan is that those 2 become a total of 16. So
Mhm.
when we're all said and done, we will have 8 times 35 acres that will be forever restricted.
okay,
And this is all done, it's a very rigorous process with the county. They have documentation.
and what's the status on that currently? I mean,
We have the contract signed. We're waiting for everything to come together. They're expensive, so
yep, okay.
it's actually a workable program they created. Good when something works.
And just for clarification, our boundary lines are 1.5 miles, is that accurate? So with this one being 1.2?
This one is about a half mile. The previous one that we waived was
Okay,
1.2.
yeah, all right. Thank you.
I guess my only thing would be is, if we were to go as a committee to commission to say, we combine it with this one, I would agree with staff in indicating that for the next go-around, that may not be the case. So, the 16 and then whatever else comes in after that, we may want to.
Depends on individual circumstances.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I agree with staff on that piece.
I mean, I'm just hitting up staff. I mean, where are we've talked about a boundary agreement a number of times. Where are we at with that currently? Sorry to bring
Not
up
far,
sore subjects, but,
not far, but we probably can't talk about that.
okay.
That was one thing after the Sky High one, we said we'd kind of liked a little more, concrete with the township as far as road connections and stuff like that before we allowed any other subdivisions. I do notice in this subdivision that the intent is to connect a road connection within the township, so they are indeed setting the precedent in their own subdivisions to connect roads.
And it would be worthwhile, a comment that we received from Deer Grove EMS, and it's probably more for the county and the town to work on with you guys, just to let you know that the Deer Grove EMS was concerned about and maybe I'm pronouncing the street name wrong, but is it Conestoga? Conestoga Trail. There's an existing Conestoga Trail to the north of the platted area, and then there's the area that's going to be undeveloped for a while yet, and then in the immediate area to be developed, there's a Conestoga Trail, and Deer Grove EMS is concerned with someone responding to the wrong area, and then they're a long way off because there's not a loop there, so their recommendation would just be for the new Conestoga Trail Road to change the name of that, if that's possible.
How about South Conestoga versus Conestoga?
I mean, their hope was to, they were referencing streets like a Pine Terrace and a Pine Street, and they'd rather have two totally different names than to have any similarity for confusion purposes, but
That's certainly.
it's probably, this probably is further than what our approval of an ETJ would be. I just wanted to pass along information.
Yeah, that's certainly doable. I guess I just assumed that it was going to connect and that would be a requirement that it had the same name, but it can change.
Yeah. I think the issue is just how far away that is from, how many years away that is from happening.
We hope it's within 2 to 3 years from happening, but that's still a long time when you're talking an emergency.
I'll try to explain what a Conestoga wagon is too. We had to, John DeWitt and I had to be taken to school on those, so we remember.
Just circling back to what everybody talked, I'd be leaning towards number 2 myself. And I think that if we get through the process, that, you know, the board would be listening to that at that point, but, leaning towards number 1's probably, in my opinion, probably wouldn't be as likely, so.
Do you have to go back to the town at all?
Yeah, next week, the 17th, I think it is,
Monday,
For what?
the final approval of preliminary plan.
Okay, so you're taking the preliminary plat to them, and then you have to go back to them with the final plat as well?
Yes.
And those are 2 separate meetings?
They were
Usually.
that I think is going to be 2 separate meetings, because we're going to have the county in there at the 28th of this month. So then we'd be all done somewhere in July.
Okay, so you
Tied
have,
to your meeting.
so on Monday, you'll have the preliminary plat done for the town board,
Yes.
but it's not done currently for us to review?
Oh, it's,
It's done, it hasn't been officially approved yet.
So it
They've
has-
submitted it to us for the July.
Okay, so does the town board have to approve the preliminary plat before we can approve it?
Not
No, it's-
necessarily.
Us and the town and the county would all have to approve it in much of the order.
Okay, I'm just confused then why we aren't looking at the preliminary plat at this meeting then.
it's pretty exact from what you saw last time, and it was available.
Right, but you're asking us now to, to forgo our rules, that how we usually do things, to approve both the preliminary plat and the final plat at our next meeting. And I just don't understand if it's done now, why we aren't looking at the preliminary plat now, so that we
Approving
can
it.
follow what we usually do.
And what you usually do has a different level of engineering, because there's not sewer water out there and curbing. But I see your point, of course. It's,
It's not unusual to stagger them, just in case they get comments at the town and they have to change it. Then they're not changing both.
Because they have to come back, if they change it from the town, they have to come back anyway, because approval wouldn't be.
We've done it all different ways. We've done it where it was contingent upon the town or, you know, and approving it, or the county approving it, so we've done it in all different orders in the past. So you're right, Melissa, we could be reviewing it right now,
Okay.
and then we wouldn't have to.
Right. So, I mean, of the two options, the second one to me is better, but it's still not a great option considering we have our process in place for a reason.
Well, I think they're taking the risk though, because we normally would have more time between the preliminary and the final, and they understand that we can look at the preliminary and say, oh, wait a minute, there are some things that have to be changed, so they're really taking the risk. And given the fact that there are these other reviews going on with the town and the county, to make an exception like this, I guess doesn't really trouble me as much as if we were talking about the ETJ option.
Any other discussion?
Just what's the procedure, so bringing it to the dual option, is that a motion to direct staff to work with developers, or is it really just somebody direct staff to work with developers? Do we need a motion on this? Or-
I think you've moved the table at this point. There's really nothing on here that, just from a procedural point of view, just move the table with the idea that they're gonna be back.
So moved.
Second?
Does
So
it
with
re-
the understanding that you'll accept them both.
Right, next time.
Both of us.
Does that require a public hearing for this? Is that,
Town and the county both do a public hearing.
Yes.
but
No,
for our purposes?
Okay.
I don't necessarily feel like we have to table. I mean, I feel like for what I've been discussing, we're leaning towards number 2, so we would be doing that at a later time.
That is the table.
Not necessarily, I mean,
I don't know, that's what the lawyer told me to do.
that's what I'm hearing, but I don't know if I necessarily feel that way, but,
I wasn't sure.
so, I guess, as opposed to tabling, I guess I would be would be making a motion to lean towards number 2 on our agenda and making, well,
He's
I'm discussing during discussion, so
You are correct.
I agree with you. I'm not, I mean, I'm just wanting to talk this out, but I would think we're leaning towards number 2 as a group, based off of discussions, which would effectively be saying the same thing, except for, rather than tabling it. But
Roberts is feeling accommodating tonight, so we can do it either way. It doesn't really matter, but I think that just so that they understand that the Plan Commission will consider both, but doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to pass or approve both.
We understand that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, but he said accept both, and I don't like that language.
Did I say accept? Okay.
that's,
Which is what I was talking about.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a
We'll
motion.
consider both.
Yeah, it says,
Like
it
submittal, I guess. is-
Okay, all right, thank you.
says either or, so it's the
Yeah.
table to motion, or motion to table what?
That's my,
Both?
that's my question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think it's Fred's question too.
Well, that was, so it's, we'll table it and consider accepting both at the next
Right.
meeting,
I'm fine with that
is
language.
what I heard
Yes.
after clarification,
Yes,
so.
if that's what it is, and that's what the second is.
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay. All
So
right.
Lisa, could you read the motion?
Thank you.
She's like going, what?
Motion by
That's
Jennifer to table and consider both at the next meeting, second by Alex.
Yes.
I guess I would say both, I'm meaning the preliminary and final plat.
Both submittals,
Both submitted.
yeah,
Oh,
as
okay.
opposed to both options.
Consideration.
Okay.
That's, okay, then I'm okay with that.
Yep.
And Lisa, now the motion reads.
All right, that's good.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. All right. Are we doing a roll call or are we doing a vote?
I just wanted to-
No?
I think somebody asked for the motion to be read again. I'm sorry.
No, I was kidding.
Oh, you were, I'm sorry.
Actually, I think he's.
I'm not kidding. I wanted to know what
He
it
wants
what it is. just in
Motion
case.
by Jennifer to table and consider both submittals at the next meeting, and second by Alex.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay. Two noes.
Which was Melissa and?
And Fred.
And Fred, thank you.
For the no table. For now.
Thanks, Dave and Dave.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We got a little squirrely after 6:30.
All right, item 8 is discuss and consider request from Madison Window Cleaning for approval of the site plan for office light industrial building located on the eastern approximate 2 acres of lot 11 in Cottage Grove Town. And folks are here from Madison. You guys want to pop up?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us here tonight and having us on the agenda. I'm Tanya Weger. This is Jerry Borkman, Dimensions. He's our architect. Nate Graney from 1848 Construction, our builder. Cash Weger, president of Madison Window Cleaning. I'm Tanya Weger, vice president. We are very excited about the opportunity to come to Cottage Grove. We have been Madison residents all our life as far as our business is concerned. It's been operating for almost 90 years there in Madison, and we have currently outgrown our space. And we have looked for 2 years for the right location for ourselves and decided that Cottage Grove is the best spot for us. We love this community. We actually located to Deerfield. We have family in Cottage Grove, and it feels like home. So we're very excited to be here and have our business here. We currently have a plan here that we've presented that the Architectural Review Committee looked at Monday, conditionally approved. If you'd like, I can go over just some of the basics or just answer questions.
I'd go over the basics.
Go over the basics. Okay, we have a 12,000 square foot facility roughly, which 2,700 of it is office. The back warehouse is about 9,300 square feet. We have 20 employees in our organization at the present time. 6 of those employees will be in the office full-time or doing sales and coming and going from the office. The other employees are technicians that actually go out and perform services for our organization, so they would be dispatched in the morning and coming back in the evening. We are open Monday through Friday and some Saturdays. And we also do snow removal services during the winter, but things do definitely slow down for us, as you can imagine, in the window cleaning business. We have a very great architect who has helped us design I'm very impressed, and he has helped us design a fully compliant facade on 3 sides of our frontage that faces Commerce that will look very aesthetically pleasing and go very well with the rest of the buildings that we have seen throughout the Commerce Park. And we have some of those here in the plans. I do have some additional plans if any of you would like paper copies to look at. At all?
We've seen them on our.
You've seen them all? Okay, beautiful. The warehouse itself is, like I said, 9,300 square feet and will be mostly blocked once the corner lot is developed as well. But we have placed it as such on the lot and with landscaping as to soften some of the appearance of the very long metal facades that you might see from the east or the west. And that's currently what we have going on. We do have plans for future expansion. Right now, we have 12 parking stalls in that particular garage. We have 9 dispatchable vehicles right now, and we do plan to grow into that in 2020 and have some additional room to expand off the back of the warehouse at a later date.
So I think part of it is to, we store the vehicles inside them, so that's kind of the whole purpose, for that. So there's things we don't want to freeze at night, so there's not a lot of vehicles or items being stored outside on the lot. So we keep everything in the building itself. The other thing, as she mentioned, we did a lot, actually invested pretty heavily in the image as you come up to the building itself along the street. So we've used 50-50 chance. So in the front, we wanted to actually bring in materials that we've kind of seen in the park and very durable. So you want to get a mixed materials too, that kind of break down the scale. So we're using actually a combination of a smoother or darker brick on the building, which kind of the piers between the windows up to where the top of the window heads are through that area. And then we've used then a cement siding material, like hardy plank might be more, but it comes in panels, not just planks. So we can actually get that and get a kind of a larger panel material on that rather than the smaller portion. Now we're also then using a stone or a cultured stone right at the corner to kind of pop out the entrance in the building and pick up a little more of the front of that. So we did a lot of that focus on the front and get a mixture of materials in there. And lots of windows too, since we are in the window cleaning business. We want to demonstrate what we can do also. And I think the hardy plank material is a good transition material back to more of the high-tech or the metal look on the building in the back, whatever. So we wanted to get a combination of very traditional materials, but also ones that kind of got a little more of a high-tech look. So I think we blend in kind of very well with kind of the other materials and things that have actually been done in the park in that area. You know, we are in a center lot there, so the future corner building will actually block most of our building toward the back, all right, so that's kind of screened. One thing is actually, we just kind of are getting the deal in place actually with the Commerce Park out there. So this lot was kind of carved off out of lot 11. So actually, that's the reason we don't have like the final engineering plan and stormwater and landscaping, is we're getting the survey done and all right now, so we'll bring those back at a staff level, you know, to go through that and make sure we get those kind of handled and coordinated then on the project itself. So that's the only reason that those aren't here yet, it's just kind of moving along. Because we do need to get relocated from Madison actually here, so we're kind of moving kind of at a pretty good pace, not overly fast, but a good pace to kind of keep the project going and get it started later this summer.
So you guys saw the staff recommendations, which I'm sure probably came from the art committee?
Yes.
Yeah, they approved it with the same conditions.
Okay.
What kind of trucks do you have, and what kind of truck traffic do you have for deliveries?
Sure. Our largest vehicle is an F-150 truck. And so that's a Ford vehicle, light-duty truck. So we don't have any big loads or anything coming into our building. So we don't even have a loading dock on the building. Mostly the supplies that we use are hand tools and other types of supplies. So we have trucks that have ladders on them and equipment in the back of the trucks. And then we do have a small transit connect and then a transit van. But we don't have any high weight, commercial vehicles beyond that size.
The trailers?
No trailers.
The trailers in the future?
You know, the only thing we'd ever trail in the future might be some type of a spider lift, but we're currently renting, so it's not in the future plans right now.
The only reason I'm asking is obviously there's a lot of parking on that street, and so when you cut your driveway in, I guess what I'm looking at the angle is like, you're gonna have to, those are gonna just make an assessment as to when no parking may be within so many feet of your entrance, because you wanna be able to get in and out without any impediment, and trailers, those types of things, big trucks, not having those, that helps, certainly helps, but making that swing, if cars are parked right up to your entrance.
As well as,
So that's something to consider. I don't think it's necessarily for this, but that's kind of why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Something to think about, that's, you don't want it to be a problem for you, so I don't know. And I probably have to go back to the Hopper committee for parking everything we want to do down here, so.
to give you an idea of where we're pulling out of right now and what this will be a huge improvement. We are currently on the corner of Dickinson and Wilson, so if any of you have been downtown, we are on the Capital City Bike Trail, literally located right on the bike trail. Our trucks have to back out and cross that Capital City Trail, and the traffic's very heavy and congested down there. So I really appreciate that you're bringing, this to light, because I didn't even think about that yet, but I do know Johnson Health does have quite a lot of people who are possibly parking on that street there from overflow. And, safety is our number one priority too, seeing, there's no accidents. We can see where we're coming and pulling out of, so we'll see how it goes when we get there, and if we need to. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Alex.
I don't think it'll be an issue with their pickups.
No, but when you think about future growth and those types of things, we've looked at different places, different things, jobs, lifetimes. 25-foot buffer, even a 10-foot buffer sometimes.
Any Questions?
Yeah. So Monday, we talked about the sprinkler system. And do you know when you'll know about the state building codes and if you have to
So
follow
maybe
those?
Jerry can talk to that. We're just going to do whatever the state requires. We're going to
Right.
comply, of course.
Right.
And then we do have a very high interest in doing it anyways, regardless if they don't, because of asset and life protection. So,
So ours is the storage area where the trucks are going to be stored. Anytime we're over like 5 vehicles in a storage area, the state code requires us to go into sprinklers. So we're going to already have sprinklers for that portion.
Okay.
I guess the only question would be, do we put a firewall between the warehouse storage area and the offices and not sprinkle that smaller portion? But to be quite honest, once we brought in the water service and we've got the main runs and the heads, those last few heads and that 2,500 square feet in the office area is probably not, we're probably going to do it all and just kind of be done with it. And, again, we've got that safety factor in that.
Right.
Since we have to bring the water in, yeah. We could have avoided bringing the water in altogether, but we have to break the building into like little 5-bay vehicles with firewalls, and it just doesn't function well that way.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a couple comments. So you're currently renting in Madison?
we currently own.
Own, okay.
Yes.
So you're considering relocating out
Yes.
to Cottage Grove?
We have 5,900 square feet that we're operating out of.
Okay.
And if you happen to see a recent Facebook post this evening, our building is literally packed.
Yeah,
It's like
maxed out.
parking Jenga in our building right now. So we're very
Awesome.
excited about this opportunity and to grow.
Awesome. Well, thank you for considering Cottage Grove.
Yeah.
And looks like a beautiful building, and yeah, that's all I had to say. So
Okay,
thank you.
super. Thanks, Kyle. We're excited too.
I was gonna say the same thing. Congratulations on growing and thank you for coming.
I have a question. What kind of chemicals are you going to be storing inside?
Sure, good question. So we do a lot of our window cleaning using simple products such as Dawn dish soap and some water. A lot of our products are not harmful to the environment because they are simply those types of things. The only chemical that we have that we require a permit for is methanol. We, in the wintertime, will use methanol as an additive to our water. We have a fire safe that 55-gallon drum is in, which is inside a cold storage unit, which is also on the plans and vented. And then we have blowers and snow blowers, leaf blowers and snow blowers, so you're going to have some mixed gas in containers. But as far as any other types of chemicals, other than maybe a spray bottle or two on a shelf that we'd use to treat silicone or caulk on a window, we don't have chemicals.
Okay.
Motion to approve the site plan for Office Light Industrial Building to be located at the eastern, I think that says edge, approximately 2 acres of lot 11 in the Cottage Grove Country Club.
Second.
Motion second.
Like a friendly amendment, there's 8 staff recommendation conditions.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. With the recommendations.
So that, I agree.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. May we take these samples back
Do
with
you
us?
want these for any reason? Otherwise, we'll put these out again.
Take them with
Need
you.
them for the board meeting, huh?
Yeah.
On Monday night.
Can
Would
we-
you like to keep them? That's no problem.
Sure, we may as well keep them around.
I'll
Okay.
just place them back over there.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And you can have them Monday night when we're all done.
Okay, so no problem. We're in the neighborhood.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Item 9 is discuss and consider the request from High Grant for approval of site plan amendment to construct a storage canopy at 114 North Main Street. Based on what Aaron has heard, I'm going to make a motion to table this, and Aaron, you can fill in.
Yeah, they want to reconsider the location of the canopy. They'll come back in a couple of months. They said they're actually going to.
I said the table just because then that way it's on the agenda, we're reminded, and when they come back, then we'll just take it off the table.
I motion to table.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and second to table. Any further discussion? And we heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's all right.
Don't think it has to be tabled.
Item 10 is discuss request from John DeWitt for feedback only, no action to be taken. And A is discuss potential rezone parcel at 649 Court Crossing in new planned business to neighborhood business. And John's here and he's asked to speak, so please.
Thank you. With me is Kyle Adams, a realtor with Rita Bush and Company. So if you have any questions about marketing and that sort of thing, he's the guy to direct it to. Now, I don't know how to work this thing, so I'm going to do my best. But just to kind of set the table, the lots that we're interested in are lots 2 and lot 48. All along Cottage Grove Road, the commercial and office type of buildings have been in play and for sale since about 2003. In 2011, we got CVS in there, and we thought that we would really get things going at that point in time, and that other retail users would flock in there and move it. But I think that we're faced in a world where, in particular, brick and mortar retail is a tough sell at these times. And this property's been sitting there, we're having trouble. Metcalf's who bought the property from us, they happen to be, one of the owners is a law partner with my partner, and they've been trying to work with us to try to find what they could do to get their stuff going. Gunderson, of course, is just waiting to decide when he may want to put a funeral home up. All along the south side, nothing has happened at all. I'm not aware of any serious interest in any of the properties. And not very well shown here. Our apartment, the Artisan Apartments, are right next to that. And I'm going to kind of conflate these things if I could. But in this area we're talking about, we think the best, highest and best use would be to try to get some apartments in there, some nice quality. We understand that some people don't like the architecture very well of the Artisan. And we would certainly try to make that a more traditional type of look if we did something there. And I'm not saying that we would do it, whether it be us approving the architecture of a buyer, or if we tried to do it ourselves. That would be the sort of expectation. We sent along, I don't know if I got to you in time or not, but I sent along a couple of plans that have been done by somebody who looked at that property for multifamily use a couple of years ago. They pulled out because they thought it was just too expensive to get going. Thank you. One plan, I gotta make sure I got the right ones here. One plan was for a 26-unit site, and you can see here, this Google was done with, well, that was still under construction. And of course, all of the properties behind here are single-family residential. I have no idea, I've not done any survey of the residents over there, how they might take that, but it would seem to me that as between a potential commercial use and a modest-sized multifamily development, that would probably not be too objectionable. And I would think that would be a good use. They also had a plan for a 24-unit building here. So they were just trying to cite things. They didn't give us any elevations or anything like that. They're just trying to show how it might fit on, be able to comply with village ordinances for parking and that sort of thing. So that's just to demonstrate what could possibly happen with it there. On the other side, on lot number 2, we are considering, or want you to consider, approving a rezone that would permit the use of that property, get some clutter out of here, for a duplex development. My interest in doing this in a duplex development came about because in some of our other subdivisions, duplexes have kind of started getting some muscle again. We had a buyer buy a set of 7 lots in our Mount Horeb development. I've had a couple of other guys in some other developments talking about wanting to buy them in larger groups. We had, talking to my engineer, he has a customer who does these things, but he tells me they wouldn't be interested in this unless it was, quote, shovel-ready. So that would mean that we would have to be able to say, look, this is ready to go. The village is okay with this before we could get that going. So, you know, before we go ahead and start spending a lot of money on this, we'd like to know whether or not this is something that the village would support. I've tried to demonstrate it here. This happens to be a 6-lot subdivision of the lot that's up there. Now, there's some challenges to this because the road in there right now, that's a private road. And CVS happens to own the south half of that road. So if we didn't get any cooperation with CVS at all, we'd then have to move the road up here if it were to be put into a public road, or find some other way to allow those units to have their access and that sort of thing. So there's certainly some issues that we got to address when we go in there. Probably we'd end up doing a 5-unit development instead of 6-unit because it's starting to squeeze in a little bit. You can easily do it, but with 5. And of course, all of these lots around here, these are all duplex lots around here. These are not single-family homes. So it seems to me pretty consistent with the development that's going on there. I read the report of the village planner, and I think that the comments that made are very appropriate to what we have here. And I think that would be a good use for this. I can't see a commercial retail type use going in there, particularly since it's off the road and, you know, tucked back behind there. So again, it seems to be a pretty reasonable use for that. So what we'd like to do is get your feelings on it, any comments that you have, so that we can start putting that into the stew and start figuring out how we're going to mix this up and try to get things accomplished. We really need to get this property put to some sort of use. We've got to get the property working for us, and I'm confident that the village would like to see some taxes generated out of these properties. We've been sitting there for an awfully long time. I don't know, Kyle, do you have any?
I would echo John's comments. I know familiar faces for many of you here, so obviously we're very involved with Cottage Grove. For the lot that John's talking about north of CVS here, we've been working with John for, I want to say, about 5 years now, and very few, if any, calls for any sorts of commercial or retail here north of CVS. A few east of CVS, but north there's not much. You have almost zero access, or you have zero visibility from the road, I should say, even though the access is there. So I think this certainly keeps in line with the residential that's in the area. And again, Aaron's staff report hit that one right on the head. And as far as lot 48, which is just west of Artisan Square there, the majority of the calls I get are from multifamily developers who are very interested in putting up a project, but with the zoning not being appropriate, they say, well, give us a call back when the zoning is more in line with what you want to do there. So again, it sort of echoes and puts a nice sort of gateway on it. If it could be another multifamily right across from Artisan Square, I think that would sort of help frame the neighborhood as well.
You know, CVS has put some limitations on those lots as well. I don't know if you want to talk about that as well.
Who's that?
The
I'm sorry, I
limitation-
don't hear very well.
I know CVS, when they bought that parcel, they put some limitations on those other lots too. Why
Yeah.
don't you go on
Yeah.
that, if you want to talk about that a little bit?
There are a number of restrictions on the sale of lots, even across the street from them. And of course, we were pretty anxious to sell, so we agreed to those limitations, those restrictions and that sort of thing. So there are some things that can't go there. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. I think there's been a couple of gas stations probably that have talked about some of these things. We've got some restrictions that would prohibit that.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you also have first rights of refusal on certain multifamily projects for like the Metcalf property, so that, you know, that has kind of, you know, helped prospects of potential projects there back as well. So there's kind of a lot of things that play
Yeah.
in this corridor. But
We still got approval for any type of building that goes up any place, because we are the architectural, I am the architectural committee, I'm a committee of one, and approve the architect and that sort of thing. any rezoning requests and things like that, so. And of course, we've got a very strong interest in seeing that the multifamily stuff is done correctly, because we own the 65-unit Prairie Grove apartments, and we also are owners in the 50-unit Artisan project, so we need to make sure that we're protecting our interests as well.
John, just kind of looking at this picture right here, were you talking access off of Damascus, or are we talking access off of the, what you would call that, a roadway between Damascus and Court Crossing? I mean, is that a road, is that a driveway? I'm a little confused on.
We would not
What we're looking at.
change the road configuration. We'd have to change the roads, because the road that's in there behind CVS now, that's only 30 feet wide.
Okay,
Okay, so half of that road is on our property and half is on CVS property.
okay.
If we were required to put in a 66-foot road, if we couldn't find any alternative, then all of that extra property for the road would have to come off the bottom side. It still leaves us with plenty of room, so we
Okay.
know that we're able to get, you know, I laid that out, and I don't know if I've got this is a little further configuration of that. What I've done there is
Yep,
to show that if we pulled that road all the way back here, we still had something like, well, we had 131 feet. Typical lot depth is about 125 feet, so there's still plenty of room in there for duplex, and at that point, you know, if we widen it up, there'd be a lot of room on the width side, so.
okay.
There's still real conforming lots for what people are doing in terms of building.
So just for clarification, is that a driveway currently, or is it?
Currently, it's a private road or private driveway would have to be dedicated to the public as part of this.
Okay,
How close does that road come to that duplex that's on the edge there?
all right.
That's on Cork.
What was the question?
How close would that new road come to the duplex that is on Cork?
Put the last drawing up, John.
Oh,
That one you got your hand on?
okay. So this one,
That one, yeah.
yeah. Well, this is their property line back here, and this is the 25-foot setback. Or I can't remember if it's 25 or 30, but whatever the village ordinance is.
If you
The
had
road
a
to the
bigger
south.
road,
Yeah.
I
where
think
was
it-
that?
Oh,
I'm thinking that's all set back there, yeah.
yeah,
To,
that's, I'm sure,
there, right? Yeah.
yeah,
To
yeah.
easement.
I think it's Burnley.
The dark line is the potential road.
Okay.
Is that your property line then, too? Where the
Well,
black line is?
The current property line is this line right here that goes through the middle of the road.
Oh.
And I don't remember, I guess when this was done, this strip here, which is obviously unusable for anything, was simply there because there's no place else to put it, as I recall. We've got, I think there's some utilities perhaps in there, I'm not sure about that.
But that's your property,
Yeah,
wherever the black line is.
yeah, and
Well,
this
that's
is lot
easement.
number 3, and that's of course ours too, so.
Road easement, so, based off of that. Property line is the line, but I'm assuming that the easement goes from where the road is to where that line is.
Yeah,
Right?
well, this road, all of these roads are private roads,
Right,
and the lot lines go up to the center of the roads. And, you know, the respective people who own the property, we own both of those, so it's just CVS or us. And then there's a joint maintenance agreement that controls the road. So we
so I think
plow,
to answer your question, that the road would go to where that dark line is, basically.
So would you just build another two, or it's not, is it two? Yeah, it's 2 lanes there. It's not really though, is it?
It's a narrow.
It's pretty, yeah.
It's a narrow.
Would you just build your 2-lane road adjoining that road, or what are you thinking?
One big road.
One, I mean, to CVS, I think that's okay. That's the question.
well, in theory, they would, hopefully, I think, first off, CVS, I'm confident, would agree to put their land in, because then if it was a steady road, they wouldn't have to pay their half of the plowing and stuff like that as we go along. So I don't think there'd be a problem. I've laid it out assuming that they objected. And said, okay, even if they object, there's enough room in here to make it 66 feet wide, and I'm hopeful that we would be able to say that, okay, we recognize that 15 feet of this is owned by CVS, but we've got our road width, we've got plenty of access and that sort of thing.
How would that look, being a road right next to the school like that? Like
Well, it's
people
there
would-
now.
Well,
It's
yeah,
there
but
now,
it's
yeah.
not
It's just
a
gonna be
road
wide.
road.
Well, I mean, you can drive down it,
No, it's different being a road compared to a driveway.
but it's not even a block.
You don't, you ever drive that way?
I drive that way all the time.
To drop off your kid?
I don't
Parents
drop
do
off
crazy
children,
things.
but I go that way when I leave CVS.
Yeah. I guess,
We put that service road in there to start.
I don't know if Aaron wants to give us clarification on the differences.
I have a lot of
between-
historical facts, but that's not one, I'm not sure why it was flagged down.
That was part of the CVS site plan, and then
Yeah.
What's the major differences between PB and NB then, on the
currently planned
discussion?
business, which would not allow any residential.
Okay,
If we switch it to neighborhood business, there would still be some commercial potential, just in case, because
If
as
it-
soon as we zone a duplex, then someone will call wanting to put an office there.
yep,
The neighborhood business would be a little more flexible, the duplexes would be a conditional use. So they'd have to get the conditional use permit, the neighbors would be involved with that review, so we can get their feedback, but I think that would be the most flexible.
you're thinking 3 duplexes for 6 total units on here, or?
I'm sorry?
Are you thinking 3 duplexes for a total of 6 units on this
No,
location?
each lot is a duplex lot, so
So
there'd be
we're
12.
talking
Yeah,
12 total units,
Right.
possibly, with flexibility of if, okay.
I'm thinking, in all probability, it will be 10 units. That's what I would expect.
Okay.
Would it be possible to do, like driveway entrance off of Damascus to go to the 6 lots?
Well, in
Way-
theory, there would be, just as there is in this duplex lot, there would be possibility of one of the duplexes coming off of
But I mean, access to all 6 lots from Damascus.
No.
I don't think so.
well,
Yeah.
Through here,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So that would be just, at that point, it would simply be a city street connecting Court.
Well, it would-
That's the only access from there,
Yeah.
would be coming from there. There's no, are you asking if we should have access from Damascus to the units going to the south?
Like an alley,
Right
back
in the
alley.
middle between the duplexes currently there and the empty lots.
That would
Yeah, right in the
significantly
middle.
reduce the lot size.
Yeah, that probably.
No, you wouldn't be, I don't,
makes sense.
you pretty much have to do that. You'd have to have a cul-de-sac in there to accomplish that. And if you did a cul-de-sac, that cul-de-sac would have to come in here, about this wide. And now you've got too small
And
an
then
area
you've
south of here to site a building.
got those duplexes
Yeah.
to the north, they're abutted by 2.
Roads.
I think they'd rather have 2 sets of
Well, it wouldn't have to be a road per se.
Still got traffic and not green space.
I guess
Well, there's a possibility it could be an alley. I don't know what a dead-end alley does.
So
these
neighbors
duplex-
to the north, I'd rather have a
They'd
yard
be
about
back
it
to
than
Yeah.
I mean, as a
I'm not sure that
whole-
that could be conforming in any way, could it? Because if you had an alley in there, what's a fire truck gonna do?
Yeah.
I don't see how a fire truck gets in there, service that gets turned around.
On the map in our packet, it looks like you have access from Court Crossing too.
Yeah. You got,
That doesn't really show on there, but it kind of comes off to the west there off of Court Crossing.
yeah, there's access from Damascus, there's access from Court, there's access from,
From that
at least
driveway.
coming west on Cottage Grove Road.
I guess as a whole, I mean,
It's just weird.
the market typically dictates what interest is, and I'm thinking that, that you probably on a tax level would increase revenue based off of getting multifamily in there than either vacant land or even commercial. So I think that the proposal makes sense. I don't really know off of lot 48, what is it, the zoning, what is that currently zoning as opposed to what we're talking about right now? with multifamily? Is it more of a commercial
That
zone?
lot is currently zoned neighborhood office, which is pretty limiting. That's probably our most limited zoning district.
Okay,
It doesn't really allow retail, it's just office. It would allow up to a 4-unit building as a conditional use. You could potentially split that into smaller lots and get more 4-unit buildings. The kind of 20-plus unit building you were talking about with your plans, that would have to be done as a planned unit development.
okay, so are we, I mean, there's not huge clarification inside the packet, but are we looking for a PUD then? Talks of that location?
Well, I think we're just looking for some feedback. Are you okay with multifamily or not? And then I guess depending on what the project might be, we look at how to actually accomplish that.
Okay.
And understand that there'd have to be amendments to the comp plan and.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, on a surface level, and, you know, my opinion is there's a need, probably a greater need for those types of requests than what we're currently looking at. So I think it would make sense to discuss what we're discussing, as long as, you know, those things fall into place.
I like the duplex idea. I think that's a good, very good use for that lot there. Not real crazy. We got a lot of flack on that Artisan building, and I know when we saw the original plans, we didn't think it was gonna. It appeared to be smaller, and then all of a sudden it's being built, and it just the way that turned out. I don't know. I caught a lot of flack being on planning for that, big time. So I'm not crazy about another big monster. Your other units, John, across the way, those are nice, traditional. They're gonna look. They always have looked nice, and they're gonna look nice forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's nothing fatty or trendy. They're kind of brick and mortar.
Right.
You know, they look good.
Yeah. Well, we got the message loud and clear. And, you know, we would, you know, anything that we would do along those lines. And we'd certainly, I think that no matter how we did it, it would have to be, if we did a single unit build, or single building concept, it would have to be done as a PUD, I think. And so that would give you guys all the leverage you need on the.
I like how you have smaller. You know, you got it broken up a little bit more over there, and I'd rather see smaller stuff, and I'd rather see 2-story instead of 3-story.
We would. I don't think. We wouldn't. I have to approve it. If somebody else builds there or I build there, which we might do. It's got to be 2-story. We won't allow a 3-story because if you do that, everybody in the neighborhood is going to yell.
Yep.
And I think justifiably.
Yeah.
So,
in my opinion, this just opens up opportunity. It doesn't really change what's currently possible. So I think that it would make sense to go that direction. It's my understanding, based off of what we've been discussing, that maybe it's not duplex, maybe it's commercial, but this gives us the right to do duplex if we want, or commercial, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
Are you
John.
talking about this area now?
I'm talking about this area.
Okay.
I mean, the other area. Yeah, we gotta talk about both, I get it, they're both on the agenda, but, you know, there's a need for multifamily, and if the market's dictating for multifamily, I think if it comes up with something that makes sense, I think you have to go with it with whatever it is at this point. I mean, I've heard the complaints about what you're talking about, but I think if there's a plan that comes forward that makes sense, that, you know, meets the guidelines to the location, I think you have to strongly look at it.
in a way, there's a continuity of use as you go through. You come down, you get that lot, which is vacant, then the next lot is that multifamily. So it's not like we're sticking it right in between two other, you know.
Right.
I think that's more of the complaints that I've heard, is it's a little different on the exterior than the surroundings, not so much the use itself.
Well,
that's been
the mass of it too.
right.
Kind of came up.
I mean, yeah.
How many units, John, in the Artisan currently?
How many what?
Units in the
That's a
Artisan?
50 unit. It's a 50 unit.
And what's the occupancy?
As far as I know, it's 100%. We've done very well there. And we've done very well at Prairie Grove. So we know that there's a good market for
Large need.
that kind of level.
Community.
And our stuff, we're all market rate, there's no outside help or anything like that, so we're able to move with the market, lower the price, raise the prices, and that sort of thing.
I like what I see, I just like to see nothing greater than a two-story building in lot 48.
Well, then you gotta transition down from person to.
I think it's a good use of the space. 'Cause I think it's gonna be empty for a long time otherwise.
It has been.
Well, I'm just saying, well, an even greater length of time.
Right.
Yes.
I had to hear it when this started. So.
Yeah, no, I know.
This discussion?
Yeah, seriously, I was on the board.
So does that give you, like, we are just discussing this, so.
There's no action taken.
Again, I feel positive about it, and I think that, if we move forward, you can count on us to be good partners with it, try to make sure we get something that is along the lines of what you're looking for, because once we get to the point where it could be multifamily, then it's just a matter of kind of what does it look like and where you're siting it and that sort of thing.
Will there be a fencing component?
Would
It was just the same.
I didn't design that.
That's
Okay.
terrible.
All right.
I lost development control to somebody else.
Well, as the architectural committee, I just needed to know what you thought.
We might add that.
Can't believe you went there.
Condition.
I never. After all the times we've talked about.
Yeah.
Kyle, thanks for
Yeah.
OT.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, John.
All right, moving on, then, item 11 is discuss results from the housing questionnaire. This is standard information on that.
It's a place in line.
I don't know, guys.
Okay, so there's a staff report that compiles the results of the housing survey, which I think kind of ties right in with the sort of things we were just talking about. The highest scoring item was new multifamily housing should be encouraged within walking distance of retail, employment, recreational opportunities. I mean, that's the kind of sites we were just talking about next to CVS and along Cottage Grove Road. Scoring almost as high, the village should encourage an expanded variety of housing unit types, should encourage an expanded variety of housing prices. Housing in mixed-use structures should be considered for infill and commercial sites, commercial areas. New multifamily housing should be located near primary transportation corridors, and housing options should be affordable to those making near the median hourly wage. So all of those seem to be fairly equal as far as priorities. There's kind of another obvious tier that scored a little bit lower. Standalone multifamily housing, apartments or townhomes should be considered for infill sites in commercial areas. Some support for that, but not quite universal. Similar for senior restricted multifamily. Again, a little bit mixed as to whether multifamily should be located near existing single family. And then scoring a little bit lower was the idea of accessory dwelling units, which would be a fairly significant zoning change that we would have to take a look at to accomplish that. And then a pretty obvious lower score for the idea of putting multifamily housing away from primary corridors and gateways. So as far as what these kind of results might mean in terms of locations within the village, I threw a few maps together that start taking a look at. I'm up near the Commerce Park. So this is Culver's, Arby's. This could be a site over here where we might consider multifamily. We could still keep commercial on the end frontage. There would be ample room behind to add multifamily in a location like that. We could potentially look at one of Hamburg's parcels, like the one south of the daycare. It's a little bit more remote than some of these other ones. That something we could consider making a change to multifamily. Um, This is N and BB across the street. This is an area we've already have in the comp plan for a mix of multifamily and commercial type uses, so that wouldn't really be a change from what we're looking for now. West Cottage Grove Road, these are the areas that we were just talking about with John. Really, any of these could have some multifamily component, whether we're willing to do something that's strictly multifamily or whether some of this should be more of a mixed-use type project. I think we still do want a fair amount of commercial in this frontage, but finding a way to kind of integrate the multifamily in as well would be, I think, something we can look at as we move forward with the comp plan. This is the site in Shady Grove that they were identifying as multifamily or mixed use. And then I think this area up here, this would be south of the parcel that the school district just bought, but leaving again some frontage for commercial. I think this intermediate area would be another potential area we could look at multi. As Hamburgs continue expanding West Lawn, the concept was to increase density as we got closer to Bus Road, so somewhere in that corridor, higher density uses I think would be appropriate. And another possibility that I think kind of would potentially conform with the results of the survey looking north of I-94. Most of this is kind of being targeted for light industrial, office type uses, but this portion of Tom Beacon's land on the east side of N, it's primarily wetlands down below, so it's a fairly limited depth, and that might be another spot where it's a kind of multifamily or smaller multiplexes or maybe senior housing that might be appropriate. So I think the next step is to kind of take some of this information and start feeding it into the land use plans and the comp plan. So open to any thoughts or comments on any of this.
That just provides a lot more options, I think, to mix that in, and certainly for more options for folks maybe transitioning to a smaller home or trying to get into a home. You don't want to be in this community. This presents more avenues for them to pursue that.
I'd like to be a little bit more specific about these locations than the comp plan is currently. We have areas identified as planned neighborhood with a certain percentage of multifamily units, but it doesn't necessarily say where within these neighborhoods, and obviously that.
Well, I like what you did here by making those maps, and, yeah.
I think you gotta be careful too, like, sort of social engineering the neighborhood, like the earlier discussion, this land was planned for an office building, and they tried for 15, 20 years to be it off. Didn't work, and they're coming in for changes. So I like the flexibility of maybe not saying this land, but I also understand the need to say, hey, we're trying to steer development too, so, yeah, I mean,
But I still,
have to go to that level of detail that we should, but it's also like, hey, with caution, like, we may want to, that's why we revisit things, change it 5 years, 10 years later, say, hey, it didn't work out, we need to revisit it, and that's okay too.
I just don't think we want to give up all of our options on the business stuff
Yeah.
on Cottage Grove Road,
Other comments for Aaron?
So is this gonna be on the next agenda, or is this just for your own consumption?
We'll see how big the next agenda gets.
Yeah, apparently we have 2 plats to review.
At once.
Yeah.
Same plans.
But yeah, we'll definitely keep working on it, and if not next time, then we'll soon.
When it
But-
slows down.
I think this also provides Aaron a little direction as he continues to revamp the content.
Will you share those maps with us?
Yeah.
Because I don't think, we didn't get those.
No.
Yeah, I just kind of threw these together, but yeah, I can email and I'll take them.
That'd be great.
Sure.
All right, item 12 then is comments from commission members.
I just want to give New Tech kind of a shout out. They've done a really nice job on the Chase Lumber property. They painted everything, did some new facade stuff, they did some paving, some landscaping, and I really, really want to thank them for doing a really nice job on that property. So it's noticeable. So I
Sounds like
just want to.
Scotters went and knocked on their door and said, we want our building to
Yeah.
look like yours, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Contagious.
Thanks, Don.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Thanks, Don, no comment.
I don't have any comments.
I was unable to go to the ribbon cutting for Summit many months ago, but my husband and I just opened up an account there, so I went inside. Oh my gosh, we are so lucky to have that building here. It just looked, it's spectacular. So, that's all I have to say.
No comment.
All right. Moving on to future agenda items. Sounds like we have some plans to do.
So Kennedy Hills, they'll have their preliminary and final. Shady Grove has submitted their preliminaries, so we'll have a public hearing for that. We're anticipating the school will be submitting their site plan and rezoning. They seem to be on target to meet that. And
With
we-
roads? With roads this time?
Better. Wow. And then we may have a concept plan for a project in City as well. The Hamburgs held their neighborhood meeting last week, I believe, for the West Lawn expansion. It went well. Most of the public comments just dealt with stormwater, and once they understood that Hamburgs are putting in ponds and storm sewers, and a lot of the water that goes on their land now won't be after it develops, they were pretty happy with it. The Hamburgs have been doing some test diggings and been finding bedrock in places they weren't quite expecting, so that's probably going to delay them a month. We'll be seeing that soon.
All right, item, skip 14 is invisible.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, not debatable. All those in favor?
Everybody needs to-
Have a good evening, everybody.
Hey, gents, here's an example of,